Hello and welcome to Blue Triangle Product Training. Today we'll be joined by our VP of Customer Success, Mr. Mike Dawkins, who will be sharing his top tips and best practices for using Blue Triangle. Mike and his team work on a day-to-day basis to set up our customers for success, and this is exactly what he'll be doing for us today. So, what are the most important things you should be doing as a Blue Triangle user in terms of day-to-day monitoring, reporting, analytics, and alerting? Mike will go over all of this in just a moment, but first I have a couple of things to mention. If you're new to the Blue Triangle product training, I want to thank you for joining us today. My name is Mark. I am your host, and I am the support manager here at Blue Triangle. We'll post a recorded version of our session today in the Help Center, so if you'd like to share with other folks on your team, you can do that at help.bluetriangle.com in the product training section. The other thing is, during the session today, we invite you to ask questions. There's a questions tab to the right of your screen you can use for that. And at the end, we'll spend a few minutes going through those with you. For those of you who've already joined us before, welcome back. You're all in for a great session today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. And thank you all for joining me this morning. You're probably already aware of the value you get from using Blue Triangle Analytics strategically to measure the pages on your site that are most important to your critical business metrics like revenue and conversion. But you should also be using the portal both actively and passively to monitor your site and those critical pages, and use the portal to investigate these anomalies and isolate them down to a potential root cause. Today, I'm going to teach you a little bit about how Blue Triangle used the portal to monitor, investigate, and isolate an issue for our customers. One of the methodologies that we use to do this is a simple sort of funnel methodology. While monitoring a customer site in the Blue Triangle portal, if we see a revenue impacting performance event, we attempt to investigate the event using this funnel methodology I mentioned, where we monitor the site as a whole from that 10,000-foot view to look for any potential anomalies in performance that may be impacting revenue. We want to make sure we have well-tuned alerts and notifications to make sure that we're passively monitoring the site and we get notified the moment that those thresholds that we've set up for alerts are crossed. And then we want to narrow that down to a particular page that may have been impacted by this, and then eventually down to a resource or group of resources on that page that may be contributing to this revenue impacting performance event. So this first screen that I've started on here is one of our newer screens. We call it the home page. You can get to it by simply clicking on this Blue Triangle logo in the upper left-hand screen, and it really shows the value and the power of the Blue Triangle portal and some of the capabilities you have available to you, from monitoring error state from synthetically to actually drilling down into individual third-party services, domains, and files in a near real-time environment. Seeing a breakdown of all of your first and third-party content, all in widgets, and they're all available, again, as I said, by just clicking on this Blue Triangle logo here. But let's go ahead and start off in the alerts section of the portal. I talked about this just a moment ago about passively monitoring the site. We want to set up alerts that are beneficial to you and actionable. As you receive the alert, if there is no action to take, the action is to tune that alert. So let's go ahead and walk through creating one of these now. You should be able to find a little bit more information on this in other area help section of the Blue Triangle Help Center. But I did want to just go ahead and give you a couple of ideas with creating alerts that may be helpful to ensure that they are actionable. All right, so first we have to give the alert a name. So let's say test. Of course, we want the alert to be enabled, and we want to send a list of email recipients that would receive this alert. All right. We want to include a notification group if you have one available to you. And then also, we have the capability to provide SMS notification, Slack integration. We can include alerts in the graph, and we can even include a custom subject line. But there's one particular area that I want to focus on. Going through this little wizard, we can see that all of the different alert types available to you, along with the fact that you can select this via real user, synthetic, or API. You can choose as fixed value, percent change, or standard deviation, and then you enter your thresholds here down below. But one thing that a lot of people may not consider is the natural flow of traffic to your site. It certainly increases during your normal working hours and seems to reduce during those off hours. If that's the case for your site as well, I would like to just highlight this maintenance window. So there's a possibility here in alerts to be able to set up a maintenance window. And what that's going to do is give us a time period on a daily basis that we don't want these alerts to fire. Now, the reason I mention this is because we could use this maintenance window to set up two different thresholds of alerts. One for our off hour time period, which we could simply name in the general section off hours alert for whatever metric we want to alert on. But we can also have an on hours alert that has a different set of thresholds. This allows us to passively monitor the site and helps us to ensure that every one of these alerts that we receive are actionable, be it real user or synthetic. In addition, these alerts can be customized as we see going to the next screen. You can set up an alert on a particular AB segment, a campaign name, traffic medium, data center, traffic segment that we may have already had set up, or even an individual page if that page is certain business critical. So now we have our alerts set up and we have them tuned. So we know that every alert that we get is actionable and we can take the next step to monitoring our site. And that's going to be in a more active manner where we're going to move over to the dashboards here. Now, when you log into the Blue Triangle portal, you're going to see a set of 3, 4, 5 pre-configured dashboards. And likely your first thought is, let me go in and make my own custom dashboard. I just want to pause you for just a moment there to say, there is extreme value in the pre-configured dashboards to the extent that the majority of the customers that we monitor here at Blue Triangle, we are using these the pre-configured widgets that we have already set up for you. For instance, this site overview screen. Let's dive into this a little bit. This allows us to actively monitor the site as a whole. All right. We have the option to select any time frame, 7 days, 2 days, 3 days, even down to the last 6 hours, which gives us that minute-to-minute aggregation. Now, I want to focus in on this for one particular reason, just to kind of talk through some of the different indications you may see on this screen and why they are valuable. All right, so what we see in the upper left-hand corner here is all of our traffic by page views. So in blue, here we're going to see all of our page views. And then we have several page level performance metrics that you may want to monitor. So these metrics on top here are on by default. And there are a couple down below that you can select, like time to DOM interactive, JavaScript errors, time to interactive, and first contentful paint, if you'd like to add those to the graph. But what we want to watch for here is a couple of different things. So if we see a sudden increase in traffic, we may also see an associated increase to onload. That is a performance event. Now, we want to use the graph down below to prioritize that. Use revenue and conversion as a key performance indicator, right? So if onload was to spike here, traffic remained the same and revenue remained the same. I ask you, is this a high priority incident in that moment? It may not be. But if we see traffic drop, onload increase, revenue and conversion drop as well simultaneously, that tells me we have a high priority issue that is impacting revenue on the site. And we may want to try and isolate that down to a particular resource that may be contributing to that. We have custom dashboards, as I mentioned before, as well. And I do encourage you to create a custom dashboard. You can eliminate some of the time that it may take to isolate this down to a particular page group or traffic segment with a very well defined custom dashboard. Custom dashboards can look at any level of pages that you would like to monitor. They can even report on the slowest resources across the site or on your business critical pages. So please do investigate those custom dashboards as well. A couple of other performance related dashboards that you can use is our run performance and this synthetic performance detail dashboards. These allow us to drill down in a little more granularity to the actual timeframes that these events are occurring on. And we can break that down by selecting any one of these metrics here. And you can see the graph over to the left is populated. So now we're actively and passively monitoring the site for any anomalies. We know what we're looking for. We see an anomaly happening. We've received an alert. We've looked at the dashboard and validated via real user and synthetic that this is a revenue impacting performance event, and we need to investigate this event. What I typically try to do here is take it down from a site-wide to some level of grouping, right? And the best place to do this, without a doubt, is our data science. So the data science section is exactly what you see here. It's a section that it is completely blank, and I call this my techie playground. This allows me to load up any level of data in any format that I want, both real user and synthetic. For this exercise, let's say that we're trying to group this down to the particular page that may have been most impacted by a revenue impacting performance event. We'll select real user data. I tend to gravitate towards the line graph myself, so I will select the line graph. We want to select the time period that this event happened in. Being that we're actively and passively monitoring the site in near real time, more than likely we're going to be choosing some time period that is a look back. So let's, for this exercise, go ahead and select the last 6 hours. We can select our time zone so it's comfortable and it matches with other findings that we've had within the Blue Triangle portal as far as time frames. We also have the ability to group lines by a particular metric. By default, we're grouping lines by whatever metric is displayed. But for this exercise, what I like to do is try and find one particular grouping that I think may have been impacted. And the easiest way to do that is just let's look at those all of our top 5 or 6 pages by whatever performance metric we saw that was impacted while we were actively and passively monitoring the site. So for this case, we will say onload. And for page name, we can just simply select this, go and select the top 5 or 6 pages. These pages are listed in here by volume that Blue Triangle has seen. So we know that by selecting the top 6 here, we're selecting the top 6 pages by volume. We can then simply go next if we want to apply some additional filter options. If we believe one particular browser may have been impacted on those pages, we can narrow down there. But remember, our whole initiative in this portion of the portal is to try and narrow down that site-wide revenue impacting performance event down to a particular page that we may be most impacted. And in some cases, you will see that all of these top 6 pages are impacted, and we know that that is a site-wide revenue impacting performance event. So if we select go, our data science is going to populate now, and we would be able to very clearly see by page what that slowest traffic was, where that revenue impacting performance event was happening. And we would be able to isolate that down, like I said, to a page or series of pages that were impacted by this. Down below in the graph, we have the great option of seeing an average over the time period selected we have. And we can also add a comparison graph. We need to do additional levels of comparison and investigation. But for the purposes of what we're doing here, at this point, we should have been able to isolate this down to a particular browser, to a particular page, or a traffic segment that we have selected. Now that we've isolated this down to a particular page, let's take a stab at drilling down into the individual resources on that page that may have most impacted this revenue impacting performance event. To do that, we're going to switch over to the real user monitoring section, and I've selected the performance detail here. Performance detail gives us at the top this really nice high-level view of all pages on the site, all of the different performance metrics we've seen over this particular time period, and then a nice graph over time that shows us, here I have selected OnLoad and TTI, and where we may have seen this revenue impacting performance event occur. And by selecting that period of time, down below, we'll see a scatter plot populate of those individual users' page views, right? So we should be able to see in the scatter plot here, if we were looking at OnLoad, any of those users that individually were impacted by this revenue impacted performance event. We have lots of options here. If we're investigating an issue on time to interactive or base page time, we can obviously select that, and the scatter plot will be updated with the measurements for that particular metric. Now, another cool feature, if you select one of these points on the scatter plot off to the right, we're going to see all of the other page views that individual user visited during their session and the performance of those pages during this session as well. I've randomly selected this as one option. We can see that home page was seen for this particular user in 25 seconds, whereas some of the other pages in their session was delivered much quicker via a virtual turn, as you can see here. As we scroll down, we can see those high-level page view metrics. We can see specific information about this particular user. Are we having a network issue in Florida? Is Verizon Business having an issue? These are all things that we'll need to use in our investigation to try and isolate down to a root cause. And then as we scroll down, we can see it broken. We can see a waterfall graph for this individual user's session, broken down by domain, by object level, and by object activity by domain. I quite often will use this object level detail to drill down into a particular network call that may be contributing to a revenue impacting performance event. Now, real user monitoring really gives us that view, that experience from our real users. But I caution you to go ahead and check synthetic performance detail as well for this particular page. We know synthetics give us that clean room view of a particular page's performance, where Blue Triangle controls the browser. These are real browsers that are performing these synthetic measurements, and they're happening from multiple test agents across the globe. So we really get a clean room view that we know those additional environmental aspects like network time or a local regional issue or anything that could be a sort of an environmental type of impact to a particular user session will be sort of eliminated in these clean room environments. So this particular screen is your synthetic performance detail, as you can see here, similar to run performance detail. This allows us to see all of the pages that we're running synthetics to, all of the different performance metrics that can be selected and updated off to the left graph. And then again, that performance over time and the scatter plot and associated object level detail down below. With synthetics, because we control the browser, we can do some really cool things. One of the things is we capture the HTTP archive file. So the HAR file, we can dive into the individual headers for any of these page views, but we're also able to capture the functions and how they're executing on the browser itself, because we control the browser in this synthetic view. So as you can see in this particular waterfall, if I actually, let me move over to the function tracing with object level detail, which kind of incorporates in blue those network calls for each of those files that are downloading, but also the functions that are executing. And we can actually see those times when the functions are tying up the browser and the browser's not able to actually make additional network calls. And we know TTI is important, or I'm sorry, that these functions can push out our TTI, and the TTI is important in our search engine ranking. So function tracing is a great capability within Blue Triangle that may also help you to not only isolate down to a resource that may be causing an impact, but also a function that one of your JavaScripts is executing on the browser that may also be causing a revenue impacting performance event. Now, most times at this point, you will have already isolated this down to a particular group and then down to a set of resources. And you may, the very next thing I ask myself after I've isolated that JavaScript that may be causing a revenue impacting performance event, I like to look at that particular file over time to say, is this a problem that's just occurred now that we've isolated, now that we've put corrective actions in place? Let's also be mindful of the fact that this particular resource may be a problem over time. We have areas of the portal that will help you to isolate this as well. And for that, we're going to move over to our tag and content governance section. Tag and content governance is here off to the left. And one of my favorite places in this section is the domain details, along with service details. But domain details gives us a little bit is a little bit easier for us to isolate a particular domain. So let's say, for instance, we know that a particular resource from Adobe has been causing a bit of an issue. We can simply select either real user or synthetic here off to the left, and then this drop-down box where we're automatically categorizing all of the third-party tags on your site and grouping them by domain. Here I've selected Adobe TM for no particular reason, and I can see all of the resources that are loading via Adobe TM across the site. I do have my filter options available here if I want to expand the time frame or make a change from real user to synthetic, or narrow down to a particular country or region. Also on this page, as I scroll down, I can see all of the pages that this particular resource is on and the pages that it's not on. This is important to me because I could have a tag that is remaining, a JavaScript tag that is remaining over on one particular page that I wasn't aware of on a recent release that was forgotten about. And that could be the element that is causing that particular page to have a revenue impacting performance event. Now, I mentioned we want to see that particular resource over time. What we're looking at here is all resources loaded by this particular domain. But if I type in .js in the search function here of all of the resources we have available, I will be able to filter on all of the JavaScript that is loading via this domain. And if I know that the name of that JavaScript that was causing my revenue impacting performance event, I simply select it. And up above, the graph will update with that resource's timing and the number of times that resource has been requested over time. So I can very easily see that this particular resource may be causing me issues today, but not only today, it's caused me issues a little bit earlier as well. This is very helpful for us when we're looking through to find out how a particular resource has been performing over time, especially when we know that particular resource may be impacting our revenue now. There's one other place that I like to call it a hidden gem within the Blue Triangle portal that you may or may not be aware of. It's under the real user monitoring section, aggregate waterfall. We have another one under the synthetic section as well. In this particular section, you have all the standard capabilities for filtering within the Blue Triangle portal. As you're probably already aware, those are represented up above. And what we're looking at here is a waterfall, an aggregate waterfall over time. This isn't like your typical waterfall that I was showing you earlier, which looks at a single page view. What we're doing here is we're aggregating all of the users' experiences on this particular page and how those resources loaded for each of those users on the page. Right now, we're looking at it via a waterfall view, but we also have the ability to switch this to table view, which reveals a new option available to you as far as trending resources over time. So as you can see here, we have all of the same data that was represented in the waterfall is now represented in a table, but we have this new icon that's available here to the left that wasn't available on the previous screen. If we select that icon, it's going to show us that particular resource, how it's performed over the time period that we have selected. As you can see over the last 24 hours, I can see this particular resource seemed to spike up to about 3 seconds at around 8 p.m. Eastern time. So today I've shown you how to actively and passively monitor your site, how to narrow that down to a particular page or grouping that may be causing this revenue impacting performance event, and then how to use the power of Blue Triangle to isolate that down to a particular resource, and a couple of hidden gems that are available for you to help with that investigation and isolation. I hope this was helpful for you, and have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.